Filmmaker Anthony Shim's Riceboy Sleeps has been garnering rave reviews for its poignant portrayal of the universal desire for belonging through the story of a Korean widow striving to start a new life in Canada in the 1990s with her son. So what was the inspiration behind this feature film? What is the global appeal of Riceboy Sleeps? And what is the director's response to the host of critical acclaim regarding his talent in telling stories and technically portraying them on screen? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Today, we turn to the big screen for a talk with the director of the movie Riceboy Sleeps that has been receiving quite a bit of attention. I have Anthony Shim here in the studio with me. Director Shim, Anthony, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Right then, let's begin then with a synopsis of your feature film, Riceboy Sleeps.
Riceboy Sleeps is a feature film about a Korean mother and son who moved from Korea to Canada in the 90s, and it follows their journey of acclimating to their new lives, and then due to unfortunate circumstances, they return back home for the first time.
Back home would be here in South Korea.
Back home, Korea, yeah.
I understand the movie was inspired largely by your own experience in Canada. How personal is this particular film?
It's very personal, but you know, the things that are based on my own life, although you know there are certain events and sort of plot points in the film that are based on my own experiences, but I would say primarily the influence is the emotional journey of the young boy as he becomes a young man, and his struggles with his identity as a Korean Canadian person in the 90s especially, and his relationship with his mom over the years. I mean, it's that overall arc, that emotional arc that I would say is inspired by my own experiences.
You moved to Canada in the 1990s as well then?
I did,
I'm
yeah.
Assuming. I
Yeah.
see. Director Shim, Anthony, I understand that you wrote, you cast, you directed, you acted, and you edited this particular screen production. I'm sure every single task had its own challenge, but what would you say was the toughest?
I mean, the acting part was hard because, you know, the thing I love most about acting is to be able to, you know, trust a director and to be fully present with other actors. But because I had to wear both hats, you know, but part of my brain was always, you know, like, you know, as a director, it never fully left. So that part was tricky, but I would still say the toughest part was the writing because it was such a solitary process, and it's really hard to gauge or know if a film that is inspired, you know, loosely based on my own life would at all be interesting to anyone else in the world than me.
I see what you mean. And that being said, how long did it take you to write the story?
Well, I mean, the actual writing process was very fast. It only took 3-4 months. You know, I did several drafts, but I do feel like, you know, I've been sort of unofficially, indirectly working on this script, this film, for many years. You know, accumulating ideas and characters in my head or in other forms for a long time, and it really was like when I sat down to really write this film, you know, it took a few months.
I understand that you worked with with a cast that, with many of them, that is, being first-time actors. Is that right? Was there a challenge with that?
I would say there really wasn't any more challenge than there would be working with experienced actors, and I think when an actor is right for the part, when the casting is well done, it's just so effortless and so fun. You know, like even if the actor's got 30 years of experience, if that person's not right for the part, it's you know, it's a tough process. But you know, because our actors were so right, the chemistry was so good, we connected as people first and foremost. That it was so wonderful and fun and enjoyable all the way through.
Right. Anthony, Riceboy Sleeps has been sweeping global film awards after screening at many film festivals. I understand you have 27 awards thus far. What would you say was is the global appeal of your film Riceboy Sleeps?
I mean, we can't know for certain, but I would say based on a lot of the feedback that I've received, a lot of the conversations that I've had, I would have to say that it's to do with the the mother and son relationship. Its in-depth, specific, honest portrayal of that relationship and the dynamic, I think, is what's so relatable to a lot of people, even to those who aren't Korean or who aren't immigrants. I think most people can watch it and relate to the feelings that, you know, a parent has for their child or a child has for their parents. So, I mean, that would be my best guess.
And again, then, this is an impromptu question. Does the relationship between the boy and the mother in your film perhaps reflect the relationship between you and your mother as well?
I would say so. I mean, I think it's impossible to not have my real relationship with my mother, you know, bleed into the story. You know, I wouldn't say it's exact. By no means is this an autobiography or a biopic, but I think it's colored with a lot of the real relationship and the struggles and the beautiful moments that I've had with my own mother. So.
Right, I see. I understand, Anthony, that you were very scared. You were petrified, according to one media report, to screen Riceboy Sleeps at Busan International Film Festival. Could you explain your feelings for us?
Well, I mean, a lot of the fears early on was that I was afraid that perhaps because the story is so specific and unique to the Korean-Canadian experience, that I feared that perhaps the others, that we were isolating other audience members. And the reason why I was so scared of the Korean audience was because it just meant more to me. You know, if a certain country or a certain demographic, you know, can't really connect to the film, you know, it's okay. I can live with that. It's not for everyone. But in particular, the Korean audiences, you know, and their opinions really did matter to me. And we had no way of knowing whether it would work or not. And so just leading up to that first screening, I was fully prepared for the possibility that audiences completely rejected it.
I understand that the silence that followed the screening of your film back then and in Busan actually shocked you. Could you explain that for us as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, typically in North America, you know, a film will end, and when the credits start, and if the audience enjoyed the film, they'll, you know, respond with applause immediately at the credits. What I didn't know is that in Korea, typically I hear that the audiences will wait till the credits have ended before the applause, because people here consider the credits as to be a part of the movie, which I think is great, and I think that's the way it should be. But not knowing that, and already being so nervous about the screening, you know, my producing team and I, you know, we all sat there looking around going, oh my God, this is a disaster.
How did you know it wasn't the case, though? How did you know they liked it?
It wasn't until we got up on stage to do the Q&A and we could see people's faces.
That must have been nerve-wracking.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're going, like, why aren't people even, like, pretending to like it? Why is it just complete silence?
Were you as nervous when you were screening in Canada?
Yeah. Less so. Because the difference was that in Canada, I mean, our first screening in Toronto was pretty nerve-wracking, but we had so many friends and family there. You know, a lot of our cast was there, a lot of our crew was there, so it kind of felt like, regardless of what audiences think, like, we are here together.
Home ground.
Yeah, and it's, you know, we're experiencing this moment as a group, and it was just such a joyous, exciting moment. But Korea, we're in foreign territory in a way, so.
Right, in a way. Anthony, Riceboy Sleeps has been compared to the 2020 American film Minari. They share subject matter, according to one critic. And that being said, what are your personal thoughts regarding the similarities as well as differences between these two acclaimed productions?
Well, I mean, I knew that there would be comparisons from day one. I knew it was unavoidable. And I still remember when it was while I was writing the script that Minari premiered at Sundance Film Festival and won all of its awards, and that's when it kind of, you know, surfaced as this, like, new great film about the Korean immigrant experience. And I thought I thought it was over for me. I thought I would have to scrap this film, but luckily, you know, I had
enough. What kept you going? Because they're so similar if you think about it, like just roughly from the surface.
Yeah, on the surface, there's a lot of similarities, but I kept going because, well, I had some friends who had seen the film had also read my script and said, oh, you're exploring completely different territories. That aside from the obvious comparisons that, you know, I was assured by some friends that this would be okay if done well. And also, I just felt like if I could be as personal and honest and specific as I could be, then it would find its own pathway. But nonetheless, I knew the comparisons would be unavoidable and inevitable. And how do I feel about the comparison? It depends on how it's being compared to. You know, if it's being compared to in the sense of, oh, it's, you know, another film that showcases Korean American talent or Korean Canadian talent, and it's a film that is, you know, could do as well or is being regarded in that same, you know, in that same category. I mean, that's an honor. I mean,
right, because Minari won like about 6 Academy Award nominations, was it?
Yeah, and it won like 8 million awards, and it, you know, it put certain, you know, actors, certain names on the map in Hollywood. It achieved things that no other films about that subject matter had ever achieved. So to be compared to it in that positive light, it's an honor, and I'll take that comparison any day. But when it is being compared to in the way of, you know, in a negative sense of like, well, this one's better, you know, for these reasons, or, you know, we already saw a film about Korean immigrants, why do we need to see another one? Or when it starts to get into that territory, then it does feel not so pleasant, because I do truly believe that aside from the obvious similarities, the two films are exploring very different things. And I think so much of the comparison has happened because there's such a small number of films about the Korean immigrant experience. I mean, we don't, if there's a film about, let's say, the Italian immigrant experience or in America, like, we don't start comparing it to The Godfather. We as an audience, we just see it as its own entity and judge it on its own merit. I just don't think we're there yet with Korean films or even Asian American films, just because there's still such a small number of them. And I think, and I'm optimistic that as time goes on, there's going to be more and more great, you know, high quality TV shows and films about Asian people living in, you know, foreign countries. That,
hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, even since our films come out, there's been a handful of new films and shows that have come out that are doing like so great.
It's a valid point.
Yeah, and so I think 5 years from now, I think it'll just be one of so many, and we'll stop comparing them based on the obvious similarities, but compare them on its own merits as a story and, you know, for its technical achievements.
Right. Anthony, actress Choi Seung-yoon plays the main character, So-young. What essentially are you perhaps seeking to share through her character?
I mean, first and foremost, when I first started writing this character, it was the most important thing for me was to portray a young Korean and also Asian woman in the way that I felt was familiar to me. You know, for so long, especially in Hollywood, you see the way Asian women have been portrayed, and it's, you know, the stereotypes. It's the quiet, meek, subservient sort of roles, or it's like extreme, you know, kung fu, like, you know, it's like superhero types. And there's, you know, I've felt like there's been a real lack of portrayals of Asian women in particular that, you know, that I felt was representative of the women that I've grown up around. And so I wanted to make sure that that this role was portrayed in a way that it could allow, you know, Korean women in Canada and America to be able to see and feel like, yes, like that's person, me. Yeah, has captured something that is honest about my experience or our community. And so, yeah, it's just really about showing all sides, that, you know, having multi dimensions to a person, which oftentimes is really lacking. So, you know, I didn't want to make her into some kind of superhero, some like super mom that is invincible or can do no wrong, but I wanted to make a beautifully flawed human being.
That we can all relate to.
Absolutely.
I see where you're coming from. Anthony, critics claim that your film, it's as impressive in its technical approach as it is in its storytelling. How do you respond to this?
I mean, it's great. Especially considering that, you know, I never went to film school. I never learned these things in an official setting. So it's nice to know that I'm not just a hack of a filmmaker, but that, you know, there are things that we're doing that's, you know, that's good.
So your academic background had nothing to do with filmmaking?
No, no.
That's interesting. You ventured into this as a novice then?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a novice. I mean, I
apologize.
I spent a great deal of time, the majority of my life, working with actors and working on theater productions. And because I've been an actor myself, I spent a lot of time on film and TV sets. I'm an avid photographer. Like, I enjoy photography and I enjoy editing. Not as a profession, but, you know, I've just had an interest in all of these things. And because of the time I'd spent working with actors and on plays, I realized that over time I had developed and I had, you know, garnered a certain amount of knowledge and skill in a specific area, which then I wanted to, you know, put into my filmmaking. And the technical aspect of filmmaking, I think the fact that I didn't go to film school, perhaps there's a certain amount of ignorance
that allows you to try out new
angles
or
and question things, you know, that are the norm. And so much of that credit has to go to our actual crew and team, those who are professionals in their field, like our cinematographer, Chris Liu. Like, you know, we collaborated in figuring out and creating the look and the flow and the feel of the movie, but I mean, it would be wrong for me to start just taking all the credit, because he is the director of the photography in this film, and the same thing goes to, you know, the lighting team, the wardrobe team. I mean, they all are so good at what they do that the credit does have to be.
I'm sure you had a remarkable team then.
We did. I really couldn't have asked for a better team.
Right. Beyond your film, Anthony, what do you suppose are the broader implications of the recent acclaim that Korean movies, music, and dramas have been garnering on the global stage? What are the implications of that on perhaps the overall perception of Korean immigrants?
I'm not sure.
Is this something we're still exploring then?
I feel like we're in that stage where that transition is happening. Like, I just don't know where this is all going to land eventually. But, you know, it's exciting. It's a really cool time. You know, thinking back on where things were at, what it was like to be a Korean person living abroad 20 years ago compared to now. It's, you know, the progress that we've made, the changes that have happened, the hunger and the desire and the curiosity for Korea, everything is very interesting. But I think we will eventually find a middle ground where it's not. People start to recognize that it's not all just K-pop, and you know, there's other music that's Korean that is also great.
Right, pansori.
Yeah, I want to be optimistic and think that the popularity of K-pop and certain K-drama or even food, that allows people to become interested and eventually start exploring other parts of Korea as well, like more traditional things. You know, like even with music, yeah, like other types of music that exist in this country.
Right.
Same thing with film. You know, it's like that's the one thing that I'm really the most passionate about. I hope that people's curiosity and and love for certain Korean films and shows allow people to stay open-minded and want to explore other Korean films of the past and the present.
And talking about exploring, what words of advice would you like to share with those perhaps who are thinking about entering the filmmaking industry as we speak?
It's a tough road ahead. You know, I understand why people discouraged me from entering this industry. They were all correct. The warnings were all accurate.
What was the warning that resonated the most with you?
I mean, the most common thing you'll hear is, you know, how hard it is to make a living, you know, and the rejections, the amount of rejection that you have to face.
And this is something you faced as well then, in your process? It seems like your entry into the film industry was applauded. You won an award with your second film. I understand your first one was
rejected from 70 festivals.
Daughter, right?
Yeah, and I have 20 years of rejections.
I personally liked it though.
You watched?
Yes.
My first film?
I looked it up because after we got an okay from you to join our show, I looked up the movie and I thought it was quite okay.
Where did you watch it?
I have my sources here and there.
That's impressive.
Right.
You know, like, and that was like such a great learning experience, but it also was faced with a lot of rejection, and that was a huge motivation. But you know, I was an actor for 20 years, and I've probably been rejected from thousands and thousands of auditions, and that does take a toll on a person's psyche and a person's confidence after a while. And same thing with the film industry. I mean, we got so lucky. This film, you know, we did everything. I did everything I could, and controlled everything I could in making the best film possible. But there is no recipe to any of this. It's, you know, you do the best you can and you hope for the best. And you really do have to hope, because there's so many things that turned out well for us that was just good fortune.
Right.
You know, good timing. You know, there are so many films that, you know, struggled or suffered as a result of COVID, for example. You know, the fact that we were able to kind of maneuver around all those challenges, I mean, it's good fortune.
Right.
And
some things just go beyond our control.
Yeah, and so, but you know, my advice to anyone who does want to enter this field is that if you really love what you do, if you love it so much that you'll do it, you know, for no money, for no recognition, no accolade, if none of that stuff matters to you, and if you would do it for the rest of your life because you love it, then do it, and don't really give a damn what anyone says, and never apologize for doing what you love.
Right, and on that note, we'll end today then. Director Anthony Shim, thank you so much for making time to join us live today.
Thank you for having me.
Right, well, for those of you who have yet to make plans for the weekend, do check out Riceboy Sleeps, currently playing at theatres nationwide. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend. See you next Monday.